Welcome everyone, it's Ross again here. Today I'm going to talk about the good old world. So old world, walls and fences. See, you thought you were in the old world right now. Look at that picture. Glorious, isn't it? So if I zoom back just a little bit and ruin it all for you. There you go, walls and fences. It's a great box, low linear obstacles. Really do help your game. Plus, it really does help the immersion of your game as well. So, what do you get in the box? Surely you don't get all of that, right? So, God, crikey, that's a box and a half. You saw the price on the front. It's not very expensive at all when it comes to terrain. And you think you're only going to get what's on the back of the box, right? Everything you see here, times 2. And that doesn't seem like a lot of money for, what was it? £18. So most places selling this about 20 quid. You can get it cheaper, obviously, if you've got your little sources. And you're thinking, really, surely I want hills, walls, trees, buildings, things like that. Low linear obstacles really does make a whole difference to the game, especially if someone's got stomp attacks in the game. And like I said, it really does add something to the immersion. See, looking at the back of the box, looks okay. Looks alright. I don't think it's terribly eye-catching. I know they've got these red rings here that you're supposed to tie your horse to and whatnot. And it looks okay. I still think it just looks a little bit bland. So, doesn't look very impressive when you first pick it up on the shelves, but like I said, there's 2 sprues, and the sprues have all of these. So this doesn't look like a lot, right? But then you start adding it and adding it and adding it. You do get loads, and I mean loads, in the box. Look at that. And it keeps coming. This is 1 sprue that I've just clipped out, cleaned off. Hardly any mold lines, to be fair. But there you go. That's 1 sprue. So you get twice this amount. It's fantastic. It really is a bargain. £20 max, I reckon, most places. Really, really excited about this. I love terrain. You probably know I love terrain. And I've recently got into the old world. And I'm looking for the good old-fashioned gnarly trees that GW used to sell. Because I do like the old-fashioned, what we call the bottle brush trees that you get on the back of the old White Dwarfs way back when. But gnarly trees seems to be more oldie worldy, like a good old Disney rickety, quirky looking tree. That's my jam. And you get a little bit of this on these pieces of terrain. I think it's brilliant. I mean, the detail on it, you're thinking, oh, it's just walls, it's going to be boring. Yes, you can make them yourselves. I'm not taking that away. But there's a little skull there. Little tufts of grass already built in. Ivy. You know, you think it looks a bit plain, but the more you look, the more detail there is. It really is fantastic stuff. Especially like these little bits here, which I need a unit filler. So I don't really know what unit fillers are. But when you're on your magnetic tray, your square tray to put all your little square bases, that looks okay. It just looks a little bit boring. So I'm going to cut the bottom of this off, stick it on there, because like I said, you've got 2 in the box anyway, or you could do the same with this. You know, you think there's not much going on. It's just a few hedges and a few walls. But I really am blown away with the detail. So you've got your woven medieval style walls. Most of this you could use for other games like Baron's War, stuff like that. If you clip that Sigmar symbol off possibly, or you could paint it up. I mean, that could look quite medieval-y. You know you're going to stab yourself with that, Ross. For some reason there is a Morning Star or a mace or a flail, whatever you want to call it, hanging off that tree. But the majority of this could be used in any classic fantasy setting. So that looks fantastic. You know, all this looks like normal fantasy stuff, and there is loads of it. Like I said, 2 sprues in the box. I was blown away. Didn't really read it. I thought, yeah, it looks pretty cool. I thought I was getting a sprue for 20 quid. I thought, yeah, why not? I'll take a punt. But really am blown away. You can probably tell by the tone of my voice. And I'm going to paint this up so it looks a little bit more interesting than what was on the back of the box. So mode lines, very, very minimal. Just like there was one there. Scrape the bottom off. That's where they're attached to the sprue. But they're chunky. They're not going to break. They needed no assembly. So hopefully I'm grabbing a few people when I say that. Not that assembly for me is a problem. I quite enjoy assembling terrain, assembling miniatures. But some people out there don't enjoy it, and that's totally fine. But I'm going to try to make these walls interesting. So how am I going to do that? So the first thing is I'm going to seal these with a good old-fashioned black rattle can primer, like I do on all of my terrain pieces. Mainly because I worry that stuff might chip. I'm possibly not the best at storing stuff, so even though I have it in big boxes, plastic boxes, and take it to local clubs, it does get used a lot. It does get manhandled a lot. So people using other people's terrain sometimes can be a little bit harsh, possibly. Accidents happen is what I'm saying. So prime it, seal it, then I'll hit it with an airbrush, light primer over the top, and then we'll start getting some lovely colours down. But this stuff, even if you want to go pretty basic, is built for contrast, like wildwood, perfect on the, you guessed it, wood. It's fantastic. Like I said, I'm probably going to use it on Baron's War or something as well. But you can imagine making pens up, keeping it nice and modular. If you want to, attach it to plasticard and make permanent structures. I just think it really adds some detail, some quirky angles on the board. It doesn't have to be truly square. You can make yourself little roadways. Hell, you could even use it on things like bolt action. So you can imagine some bolt action troops leaping over this stuff. There's a couple of, like I said, fantasy bits, like the occasional skull, stuff like that, which you could easily trim off and modify for that. So I'm going to try to make these look quite interesting. I am blown away with how much is in the box. So I've painted my wall with a bit of a zenithal over the top of a rattle can black, like I said I was going to. So if you notice, the top is whiter and brighter than the bottom to give some illusion of grubbiness and shade. And I also want to break up the monotony of one basic colour. So all my wall sections I'm going to hit with an airbrush just for time. It really does speed it up, especially trying to get in all the little nooks and crannies. I will be picking out different colour stones as well to get a bit more eye-catching, a bit more difference. So I'm going to base these on a good old-fashioned Cornwall stone wall, like Cornish stone hedge. And it's going to have some greeny stone in there as well, a bit of bluey grey, and the occasional rusty looking stone, because stone often has ferrous metal minerals in it. So I'm going to break up a little bit. But basically my first main colour through the airbrush is going to be a Bone White by Vallejo. And just testing it with the airbrush a little bit. Thinning it out a little bit. So this is going to be my basic colour for any of my stone sections of the wall. Of course, I'm going to try to avoid any of the woody bits, because later on I'll be, funny enough, painting wood with good old contrast wild wood. So I'll rip through all of these with the airbrush. It really does save time, especially trying to get between all the little stones. So for the random colour rocks, for the ferrous looking ones, the rusty looking ones, I'm going to go with a bit of Gore Gruntifer. So it's a contrast paint. It gives a nice orangey, rusty looking tone to a brick. or a rock even. So I'll just do a couple of these scattered around. It might seem a bit garish, but later on, when we put a wash over the whole thing, it won't look quite so bad and won't stand out so much. But yeah, just do a random couple of that colour. Do one there as well, I guess. But yeah, the secret is just to keep it a little bit random. Not too many, I would say. I'll do the other side of that one before I forget which one it is. And then we're going to get some greys and stuff like that on some random rocks as well. Break it up a little bit. Next, for like a greeny bluey rock, so Coella green shade. Now I'm just picking colours that are natural in rocks. You think a lot of rocks are grey, and they're not, especially in like I said, Cornish stone walls. They are some weird and wonderful colours, and that's mainly due to the ore. And I want to make the wall look interesting. If I just did plain grey, like the box art, and dry brushed it, it would be quick, don't get me wrong, but it'd be just a little bit too boring. So picking random ones again, I'm going to go for a big one here, I think. Just really break it up a bit. So when I make these rocks nice and dirty, all these stones, they should all tie in together, especially with a nice dry brush over the top. So there we go, just pick a few out, some weird and wonderful colours. Next we're going to give it a oil wash. So, I mean, of course you could use Citadel shades if you like. There are some nice enamels from like AK and things like that you could use. So, I mean, you could go a bit earthy with a bit of rust streaks, or you can go like with your streak and grime possibly. But I normally use streak and grime on most things. Today I'm going to go something a bit more greeny, and like I said, I'm going to go oil based. So I do have a load of old oil paints, so a really good set of oil paint. So this tube, if you're ever thinking about using oil paints, you think how long this will last as a wash. Probably your lifetime. So if you want to have a nice greeny earthy wash, this green, maybe with a tiny bit of brown, thin it out with some white spirit. All you need is a tiny little dibble. Yeah, that's an official unit of measurement. Thin it out, and that will last for years, just a little bit at a time. I've got a very old soap dish. I've just watered it down. You can see how many times I've used this. Looks very professional, right? Old brush, and I am just going to slap it on, and I'm going to make it thicker at the bottom than at the top. But still, like I said, it is thinned out. So just a tiny little smear in that soap dish will do all of this terrain. So the whole tube will probably survive you your whole lifetime for miniatures. But I just find it's more of a natural colour. When it dries, like I said, I'll thin it out and get an even lighter wash on the top as well. But you'll find that these stone walls, these stone hedges, especially the old Cornish ones. Yes, I live in Cornwall, so I've been studying them for quite some time. Really, just when it dries, looks more natural and has more of a earthy texture when it dries. So not just the colouring, the actual medium when it dries does give you a bit of a different finish as well. So I'll do all my pieces of terrain like this, and then I'll do it lighter on the top half. Okay, so when it's fully dried, and I mean fully dried, it should look something like that. So grubbier at the bottom, definitely greener at the bottom. And oil paints really are a great idea. You should think about picking them up. I mean, they're not necessary. You can use, like I said, GW shades. The Chthonian camo shade would be lovely for this. But it does give a more natural texture, I think. And you can see I did thin it out rather a lot with thinners. And you could make it even harsher again. A bit more of a contrast. It always looks worse when it's wet. But when it dries, it does look a bit more natural. So I'm going to dry brush now. More at the top than I am at the bottom. And just tying all the colours of the rocks together. So this is the dead white, the Vallejo dead white that I use through the airbrush initially. Just to tie all the rocks together. So this is just getting higher points. By all means add one of your favourite whites to it or something, just to make more of a contrast. So you've got the upper edges are even brighter. And obviously you've got your darker recesses. And as per always, with a dry brush, you can always add more. It's a bit harder to go back a step. And then it's really the case of picking out the detail. So painting the skull, however you like to paint the skulls. But with terrain and any fast projects, I paint them with a white. It could be one of your favourite whites, doesn't have to be a particular brand. And then just put a slightly thinned out agrax over the top. I mainly do that because these skulls are going to be on the ground, they're going to be dirty. I'm probably not even going to highlight them back up because they're going to be trodden, and they're certainly not like a polished skull on a rack or anything like that on display. They're just left in the dirt. And you get a few bits of ivy and the little rings to tie your horse up with, tufts of grass and whatnot. Feel free to add any clumps of grass later on, but I am just going to paint the bases a rough, muddy colour. So I'm probably going to go with the darker recess to start with, so something like this, a nice bestial brown. Doesn't have to be this exact one, but this is what I've used. So I'm going to start off with this colour, and then I am going to dry brush with good old Steel Legion Drab over the top. So it's a bit of a difference in colour, and that's what you want. So it's not so monotonous on the table and still kind of eye-catching from a distance. So I'll paint all the bases brown and show you what I mean. Okay, so this is the bestial brown, so this is the darker or the brown coats. Next, like I said, Steel Legion Drab from Citadel. So just dry brush this over the top, trying to pick up the most of the raised areas. So everything should be tying together quite nicely now. Looking at the earthy colours, and I guess it's more like Cotswold stone kind of look to it, but at least it's not grey, at least it's not boring. So dry brushing the, oh, I've got a hair on there, dry brushing the Steel Legion Drab over the top. Doesn't have to be massively neat, as long as it's not one colour of brown. It looks a bit too uniform. It doesn't matter if you get a little bit on the stone as well, because that's mud, right? Mud doesn't stay in one place, it gets splashed around a bit. So there you go. And the same, funny enough, on the other side. Next I will do the details, so I'll go for the skull even, got stone on the brain now. Skull right there. And any of the loops and stuff for the horses, foliage and whatnot. For all the loops, anything metallic, like the mace on the tree, things like that, I'm going to start off with a base colour of Iron Warriors, and then Stormhost Silver over the top on the highest areas to brighten up a little bit. But the Iron Warriors is quite a dark steel as it is. They are obviously lighter steels out there. And you don't have to go steel at all. You can even go more of a coppery colour if you want to. But in my mind I'm thinking steel, very, very basic, thick, heavy. You can make it extremely rusty if you want to, so rust streaks running down it. But I'm just thinking wrought iron, very, very basic, very thick, very heavy. And that was generally quite a dark metal. Not all of the posts have these, but yeah, do the full set. Pretty good so far. And for the grass and the vines and things, I have started with a good old-fashioned War Boss green. So Goblin green isn't a thing anymore from Citadel, but War Boss green, nice mucky pot there, Ross, well done. Is what I've used for all the edges of my Old World bases anyway. So that should tie in quite nicely. And then I'm going to have a tiny little bit of moot green, just for a little bit of highlighting, catch your eye slightly. So it doesn't have to be crazy, just a little bit. Here or there, just to make it pop out just a little bit more. There we go, that's all you need. So that's the main walls. Like I said, it's more like a sandstone kind of wall, Cotswold kind of stone. Like I said, with the skull, I just painted it white and put some light agrax over it. But if you want to bring it up and make it more than a tabletop standard, totally fine, totally up to you. You can edge highlight all the stones if you want to, but I have literally just done all the stone walls in an afternoon quite comfortably. Such an easy job to do, especially with an airbrush. But also the other half of the walls, low-lying obstacles, are barricades. So it's walls and barricades. Pretty simple stuff. You want to grab yourself some contrast wildwood, and funny enough, this is anything woody, but not the woven fences. So this stuff covers really, really nicely on the fence itself and any of the trees. There's a couple gates and things as well. But already, even before it dries, that is starting to look real, real nice. So just bash all the fences out, and then we'll do the waddling in a bit. That's the woven fences with a slightly different contrast. While you're waiting for the contrast paint to dry on the fences themselves, we're going to attack these bits. So I like to use a little bit of snakebite leather. So it's quite a yellowy kind of colour. Nice and thick. So make sure we get all those little recesses where the strips of wood bend around the upright. Really work it in there. Make sure you get those little bits just there. Really get it to soak in. Put it on quite heavy as well. So there's several different colours you could use. Agros Dunes is a pretty nice colour for more of a strawy kind of wood, I guess. I'm only using contrast because it's so quick. It's literally built for anything with this amount of detail as well. So like I said, put it on nice and thick. Let it soak in, and I'll flip it over and do the other side. And we're nearly there with the whole project. So super fast, not golden demon standard by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely achievable in a day or a weekend or a couple evenings. Just a bit of fun to paint, and looks great from the other side of the table. Super fast terrain. There we go. Do it on the other pieces as well. And while I was painting off camera, painting this piece, semi-dry Blue Peter. That's one I've made earlier. It's pretty good. Not quite dry yet, but that's the kind of colour we're going with. Finishing up the other fences, what I didn't notice the first time around was a sneaky little goblin underneath the log there. So lights getting a bit dim outside now, so I've got a super bright light on. But on the box art, it doesn't show you the goblin at all. So one, I didn't notice it first time around. They've got a tuft over the goblin there. What's he done wrong? It's bad enough he's trapped under a log. Or maybe he's hiding under a log, I suppose. But they've put a tuft over him for some reason. But cheeky little goblin's got a nice little bit of detail with him. Not masses of the goblin to paint. It's literally just his hands and face. But yeah, it looks wicked. So that's basically it. So obviously you can keep adding detail if you want to, but bear in mind this is terrain, and if you want to rip out both sprues in the same day, contrast paints really are your friend. But I just wanted to try something that wasn't grey and classic stone. I said that funny. Classic stone as in just plain grey. Stone often isn't just plain grey, especially if it is a hedge. It is stone that's picked up from different places, and they try to find more interesting stone. Like I said, I'm aiming for a Cornish hedge. Underneath all of the nettles and the gorse and things like that, that's basically what this looks like. It's often green. Just think of a house that's not washed for a few years. When nature gets to it, it often turns a bit of a greeny colour or browny colour, depending on how muddy it is. Choice is totally up to you. But more natural tones, I would advise, and stay away from grey, because it makes it look more interesting. So imagine this at the side of your miniatures. Really does frame them. It's such a lovely piece. Like I said, no assembly, hardly any mould lines. This is one sprue out of 2 in the box. You know, the box is normally under 20 quid. I can't rave about this enough. It really is fantastic. And it really does help your game as well. So not only visually, but in the old world, it does stop those stomp attacks and things like that. It is a nice defensive piece. So you could spend a bit of time if you want to. Pretty happy with the way the stone turned out. The contrast here is just absolutely perfect. I haven't even dry brushed it, but you can if you want to. So that ended up rather nice. And remember, I left the bottom maybe quarter of each of the terrain pieces slightly darker with the zenithal anyway. And then when you put the contrast over the top, it does make a difference. So making the bottom half more grubby. But once again, you could put that green wash on the fences as well, because wood often becomes like a weird greeny, mossy, slimy nature, especially in the UK when it's wet majority of the time. But I just wanted a little bit of a contrast. When you got the nice stone wall, you didn't want too much of the green following onto the gate as well, because it could look too similar. But often in real life, when it is left out, you know, things are left outside, like pallets and things like that, wood does become green as well. So it could all pretty easily be blended all in one. But there's a line between blending stuff in, making it all look uniform, all in one, and actually standing out. For example, think of those Cadians in 40k. If you actually painted a really good camo scheme, they wouldn't stand out. But you also want them to stand out, because they're a miniature as well. But yeah, really do like these fences. I think there's loads and loads of detail. I mean, look at the little grot there underneath the tree. Try to do the tree slightly different colour to the fence here, mainly because there'll be a lot of wood going on in this one particular piece. But such a fantastic kit. I thoroughly recommend you picking them up. And you can always use them, like I said, in other games. So if you've got games like Baron's War or any games like that, you can easily use these, because that is a stone wall and that can be used anywhere, like bolt action possibly. But if you did want to use pieces like these ones with grots and stuff in, just put a little bit of gorse over the top of it so you don't see it, and you can use it in practically any medieval themed game at all. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please hit that like button if you did, and leave me any comments in the section below about how you're getting on with your old world terrain. I would love to hear about what's going on. I love any terrain. I went a little bit too crazy with Necromunda and spent several hundreds of pounds. I'm not even going to bother counting it up, but there was a period where I didn't even like terrain, and that sickens me. I used to think I could spend that money on miniatures, but terrain really is just an add-on to your game. Really adds that extra layer. So I did a little bit of Nilox oxide just on the brassy bit there, just to make it a bit more weathered. But yeah, love these pieces, and hopefully it shines through in this video, Ewan. Not just me saying it over and over again, but you could probably hear it in my voice. Such a fantastic box. Definitely pick it up. Stay safe, you wonderful people, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next video.